So last week in She-Hulk, we got a very interesting introduction to a character that half the internet went, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And the other half the internet, okay, let's be more realistic here. 80% of the internet went, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And 20% of the internet went, "No fucking way." And I did like give a rough idea of like what they changed about him.
Yeah, we
But I
touched on
thought, what better an opportunity am I going to get to do a character profile on Mr. Immortal? So this week's character profile is Mr. Immortal. So Mr. Immortal, aka Craig Hollis, first appeared in the West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 46, all the way back in July 1989, about
What?
2 weeks after Horry was born. Um,
Bruh.
he is the one and only member of a very particular race. He is the one and only Homo Supreme. So we are Homo sapiens.
Oh, is this a mutant thing?
Yeah, mutants are Homo superior. He is
Mm.
Homo Supreme.
It's just better.
And he is the only one who is Homo Supreme. So this, as I said, is eventually he's the last evolution of humankind, and he's destined to see the end of the universe.
Lucky him.
And as a result of this, he's kind of been put through the ringer because he didn't ask for this. So Death Urge, who is kind of Marvel's messenger of death,
Right.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
kind of routinely like creates accidents that kill off people Mr. Immortal is friends with, or in love with, or romantically entangled with, or just cares about in any way.
How kind of him.
And Death Urge's kind of thing here is you need to understand now that everyone you know is going to die, and you need to just get used to that.
Yeah, bro.
So
I mean,
he-
a brutal
so, yeah,
lesson to learn, but
Yeah, Death Urge thinks he's doing him a favor. Like, I'm teaching you nice and early in your million years of being alive that everyone's going to die, but pretty brutal ways. Anyway, so between all of his friends and loved ones dying around him and his only power being resurrected, like, it's not that he just can't be killed. He can be killed very easily. It's just he always comes back to life, which isn't as cool as it sounds, because it means, yes, I got shot and left to bleed out, but guess what? That fucking hurt. And then I came back to life. And he doesn't have super strength or anything like that. So it's just a normal guy going around trying to stop crime, dying a lot, feeling all that pain, and then coming back to life. So as I'm sure you can imagine, he's like routinely very depressed.
yeah, it's not really a fun power to have.
It's not the greatest existence one can think of. I mean, how many people would take immortality if it was offered to them? And I'm talking immortality where they just can't die. Forget dying and then coming back to life.
I like the idea, though, that people would go, oh, I'd take immortality. Not realizing that it just means you can't die. It doesn't mean you don't feel death and the pain of it. And people go, this is not what I planned for.
But one thing I didn't know about Mr. Immortal was that when he is resurrected after death, he normally is kind of in a bit of an uncontrollable rage for a little while.
Okay.
So like comes back to life, like just swinging, looking for fucking all the smoke.
I suppose adrenaline rush, right?
Yeah. So there was one person in the West Coast Avengers whose name I forgot to write down, who was his love interest at the time, who was pretty good at like calming him quicker, so that it was no danger to anyone. But Death Urge pretty quickly saw to it that she wasn't about anymore.
The sun's getting real low, big fella.
Yeah, them kind of vibes exactly. But here's the really I think the most tragically sad bit about Mr. Immortal.
Okay.
So as I said earlier, his destiny is to be the sole survivor of the universe, and this is so he can be there to ask the question, which is just kind of like a myth, I guess. Like, you've got to ask the final question, and it's like, oh, what is the question? You'll know when it's right. But while that is his destiny, in reality, he is the universe's sick, twisted backup. Because he's not the person who's actually supposed to make it.
Oh,
The person who's supposed to make it is Franklin Richards, Reed and Sue Richards' son, who
right.
I've said before is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, the universe doesn't leave anything up to chance, so it's kind of got a built-in fail-safe of Mr. Immortal, just in case Franklin Richards doesn't make it.
Fuck's sake.
So he's got to live this existence of misery and despair and death. And there's not even a guarantee at the end of it that it's going to be worth anything.
I mean, at least he might have a friend at the end.
Franklin Richards is a bit of an arsehole at times.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're the last two people.
No, but, so yeah, his entire existence is pain, and that is purely so he can be a backup in case someone more important than him can't make it.
It's tough scenes, honestly.
It's really, really rough. Obviously, we saw a very different side to him in She-Hulk. Yeah. She-Hulk being a comedy. I think, while it's a very different version, I think they did kind of nail it for what they needed for the show, which was a bit of comic levity in this guy who just can't handle confrontation, so just throws himself out of a window instead of telling someone he doesn't love them anymore.
Yeah.
Let's not, like, I think it's a pretty human experience to be in a situation where you're like, I really wish I could do anything to just not be here right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he has that out.
He does.
So, like I said, lots of changes made to the character. Very obscure character. I'd call him kind of like a cult classic. I think that's the best way to do it. Describe him.
Mm-hmm.
But there we go. There's a bit more of Mr. Immortal if you were at all interested.
If you were like me and had no idea who he was.